Good evening and welcome to Scripps News coverage. America votes, and yes, we are finally here. Today is that day, as Keith Jackson, the late Keith Jackson, would say. Yes, indeedy dandy. We got a barn burner tonight.
Yeah, we sure do. I'm Maritza Giorgio alongside Del Walters in Atlanta. We have a lot happening right now. We have results coming in from Georgia right now. Donald Trump leading the state at this point with 33% of estimated votes in, but very early in the night here. North Carolina as well. We are seeing some results starting to come in. Kamala Harris leading in North Carolina at this moment. And in Alabama, we have a projected winner in former President Donald J. Trump with 9 electoral votes there.
Yeah, in fact, at the top of the hour, we had a total of 17 states. Florida right now, we can project that Donald Trump has won that state, and also I believe we are projecting Rick Scott as the senator, the new senator, as is the old senator from the state of Florida. We're projecting Rick Scott won there. And in Maryland, no surprise here, Kamala Harris. Maryland, a very Democratic state, projected to win the state of Maryland.
And we are going to Massachusetts now, where Kamala Harris is projected to win the 11 electoral votes in that state. Now,
hello and welcome to WCPO 9's Election Night coverage. I'm Brett Pagansky. All right, it is 8 o'clock. The polls are closed here in the tri-state. Although there still could be some voters still in line in the state of Ohio, the polls were open until 7:30. Of course, there were some problems along the way, but of course, if they're still in line, they can vote as long as they were in line before 7:30. So while election workers count the ballots, we're breaking down those big races we are watching tonight. And with me now is the head of UC's Political Science Department, Richard Hartnett. Richard, thanks for being with us today.
Yeah, it was terrific. Thanks so much for having us. We got a big night ahead of us.
This is always an exciting time, and of course, everybody's watching the race for president right now. What has been some of your initial takeaways as some of those early returns are starting to come in for the state of Ohio?
Yeah, so I mean, if you look at Hamilton County, let's just start, in our own backyard. President Biden won, the county, as you would expect, by about 70,000 votes. And these early returns right now have Harris up, by my count, by about 50,000. So she's running about the same margin, right, here in Hamilton County. That's not good enough, right, to turn the state, but it seems like she's paralleling a little bit of what Biden did.
Yeah, that's what's interesting is some of those early returns are coming in for Hamilton County, Franklin County, of course, Cuyahoga County, and some of the surrounding counties around Cleveland right there. But it is obviously a very big state, and this is a state that last turned blue when Barack Obama was running for president. The last 2 cycles, this was something for former President Trump. He is on the ballot tonight, so it'll be very interesting, some of the fill-in of some of these rural counties where they're going to go tonight.
Yeah, I mean, Ohio, we were the bellwether state until 2020. 2020 was the first time in almost 80 years that Ohio did not line up with the actual winner, right? It went for Trump with Biden winning the overall election. So we've turned red, but we're new at this, right? Of not being a swing state. So I think what former President Trump's going to be looking at is, does he hold that kind of strong attention here in Ohio? Why? Because we've got a big U.S. Senate race going on, and he wants those coattails to pull Bernie Moreno over the finish line.
And that has become one of the most expensive U.S. Senate races in the country. The eyes of the country are going to be watching right there. But we are also getting some of those early results to our report. Our Decision HQ test is calling Kentucky for former President Donald Trump. So that is 8 electoral votes for the former president. And DDHQ also has the former president as the projected winner in Indiana. Of course, those are 11 electoral votes. So really no surprises there when it comes to Kentucky and Indiana right there. So it's kind of interesting how these are just the early returns. Some of the states are very much predicted. It is still very early right now when it comes to some of those things. But yeah, going back to the state of Ohio there, the Senate race is going to be very important because even though some of these counties may have gone to former President Trump, these are some of the same counties that had gone to Sherrod Brown in the past, and he's up for a very tough re-election.
Yeah, I mean, Senator Brown has spoken to a certain extent to the same constituency that former President Trump has tapped into, right? And we've had this sort of realignment where that used to be this Union Democrat vote, and that's where Brown came out of, that has shifted, right, to President Trump's version of the Republican Party, right? And so he's going to win Ohio. The question is, there's two questions, right? Does he keep the same margin that he had back in 16 and in 20? And can Brown actually, because of name familiarity for people that say, well, I know him and he has done things for us, can he flip that many people to split their votes, right? Because those folks that vote for Trump, will they actually split about 6-7% for Brown? That's what he has to hope for. That's a big, big hurdle to overcome.
And you got a lot of outside money going into those races. Well, we're going to talk about that in just a little bit. So we've got election staff counting hundreds of thousands of ballots right now. It's where we find WCPO 9 News reporter Valerie Lyons live inside the Hamilton County Board of Election office. So, all right, Valerie, the county saw a record number of early in-person voting. What are you hearing out there?
Yeah, definitely a lot of activity going on right now. Bear with my voice, Brett. I appreciate it. But nearly 96,000 early in-person votes. That doesn't include the more than 67,000 mail-in ballots received by Saturday. That number is expected to climb because they can still receive those for the next 4 days. But I want you to take a look here behind me. This is where all the magic happens here in Hamilton County. This is where they are counting those ballots, and we actually see the ticker behind me. There is a percentage in right now, still very early, but they are hard at work getting that counted. And there's two really big races here in Hamilton County on the ballot, sheriff and prosecutor. The sheriff's race is an interesting rematch. Incumbent Democrat Charmaine McGuffey is hoping to hold off her old boss. Jim Neal is running this time as a Republican. As for prosecutor, whoever wins will be the first woman elected to the office in the county's history. Republican incumbent Melissa Powers is looking to stay in the seat she was appointed to 2 years ago and hold off Democrat challenger Connie Pillage. Now again, these results are coming in. I see it over there in the back of the room, still very early, less than 50% of the vote is in right now. It does show both Democratic candidates leading in their respective races, but again, very early. We will continue to monitor this. Staff here will be very busy tonight counting these ballots. We know polls close at 7:30. We'll continue to stay on top of this. I'll check in with the candidates. What they told me about an hour ago is that they were feeling positive, happy with the voter turnout, and they're just keeping their eyes on the race tonight, as we will do here. For now, reporting live in the Hamilton County Board of Elections office, Valerie Lyons, WCPO 9 News.
All right, Valerie, thank you for that. Of course, the other thing besides the presidential race, U.S. Senate race, the key congressional races that we're following here at WCPO 9 News, you've got issue 1 on the ballot. And what's also very remarkable is the record turnout for the early in-person voting. The one thing that we saw in our reporting, Richard, is that the fact that 2020 was a much different time. You had COVID going on, but you also had more people doing the absentee ballots, the mail-in ballots. That has significantly gone down when it comes to 2024. But again, this is a much different time here.
Yeah, I think, we have to keep that in mind, that it's not so, in my view, it's not so much that we should focus on that early voting is down from 2020, because 2020 is going to wind up being a bit aberrant. It's going to be like the odd case, hopefully, for a very long time that we don't have another pandemic.
Of course.
Right?
Yeah, and another call. This is our decision desk making this call. Senator Mike Braun will be the next governor of Indiana. So the Republican senator was facing Democratic challenger Jennifer McCormick and Libertarian challenger Donald Rainwater. So Republican Governor Eric Holcomb is term limited, so he cannot run for that third term. And taking Braun's seat in the U.S. Senate will be Republican Jim Banks. So that is the call from our decision desk. So Banks is projected to defeat Democrat Valerie McClay and Libertarian Andy Horning. And of course, one of the biggest races that we are watching tonight, the 3-term Democratic Senator Sherrod Brown facing Republican challenger Bernie Moreno. So, Senator Brown is one of Ohio's longest-serving politicians. Moreno is a Colombian-born Cleveland businessman. Former President Donald Trump endorsed him here. And this has just been kind of interesting here with this race, because during the entire time where you had the the primary elections going on. You had Governor Mike DeWine going against President Donald Trump's pick, and they were kind of splitting at this time. So very interesting how this is going to split, because what Senator Brown and his campaign are really banking on here is any of those people who may be voting for President Donald Trump, they may come to his side like they have for the last couple of elections, Richard.
Yeah, I'm looking right now, Brett, just trying to see, can Brown actually outperform Trump in the red counties, right? So we have 88 counties in Ohio.
Yep.
Most of them have small populations, right? They're going to go for President Trump. The question that we're going to have to watch these numbers is there a shave off each time?
Yes.
Right? So Moreno will win those counties, but is he winning them less? And the question then for Brown's campaign is, can he make up that difference in the big 3 Cs, right? In Cincinnati, Columbus, and Cleveland, and those metropolitan areas. That's his only pathway to victory.
Yeah, speaking of Cleveland, we were talking about that. We've got WCPO 9 News reporter Andrew Rowan live at Bernie Moreno's camp right now. Of course, Andrew, you were showing us quite the room. It was very empty at the time. I'm hearing people in the background, so it's obviously filled up. What are you hearing out there? How's the crowd feeling right now, Andrew?
Yeah, Brett, there's a lot more people here in both campaigns, like you both were just talking about. This is a numbers game. And speaking of numbers, I want to introduce you to Jason here. Sorry to interrupt your conversation. Jason, they were just talking about this is a numbers game for both campaigns. You were out at the polling location here in Cleveland earlier today. What did you see numbers-wise?
At 6:30 in the morning, there was a line down the block. The turnout was unbelievable. I've been in Cleveland since 1992. I've never seen lines this long. It took me personally 5 hours to vote on Sunday.
And that was early voting.
And that was early voting.
Absolutely, wow. Sunday, there's lots of Bernie Moreno supporters across Ohio. You're here at his watch party. Why Bernie Moreno?
He has the right vision. He has the right ability to see into the future, not just the now. And he can work with Trump. I think they're going to cooperate, bring that chip plant online, bring businesses back to Ohio, drill baby drill, and it's going to increase everyone's income, but also their savings, because with lower energy, lower oil costs, lower fuel costs, everybody can start to save money again. People have been miserable the last 4 years.
Safe to say that your top issue is the economy?
The economy, but also my customers. I have hundreds of customers that just can't afford a basic oil change. It's $125. It's ridiculous. Under Trump, it was $85 for the same service. I have to pass that cost along to my customers on a daily basis. They can't continue at this rate. They're falling behind on their services. They can barely do a brake job.
You mentioned President Trump. I want to show Mike's shirt here. You mind standing up and showing us? Chilling like a felon is what Mike's shirt's here. Jason, what influence do you think President Trump played in this statewide Ohio Senate race?
He spoke the truth about Bernie. He has the ability to cooperate with the people who he needs to cooperate with. He's not slinging mud, and he's not name-calling anyone. He's telling the truth, and he's here for the people of Ohio, and I really have faith in him that he's going to do the right thing.
Sherrod Brown, it was an interesting point, Brett, actually used President Trump's name in some of his ads, showing how he's willing to work across the aisle. That did not appease President Trump. I want to play some sound for you from last week when President Trump found out that Sherrod Brown was using his name in some of his ads.
Sherrod Brown, he's taking ads in like he's my best friend. He never votes for me. He's not my best friend. They're taking ads. All of a sudden, they love Trump. We agree with Trump on tariffs. We agree with Trump on the border. We love Trump. And they're Democrats. Their friends calling up. Did they switch to the Republican Party? But it happened with Bernie Moreno.
Back here at the rally, look, Brett, people are filling in. Look at this hat. Very exciting. People have got all different sort of homages to the Republican Party. Oh, you got a Trump, what is that, a Trump pen? Oh. It makes a Donald Trump sound. I don't know if they're going to be able to hear that at home. If we walk here with me, Ray, you can see people are watching a lot of different results. The main high energy moments thus far is when Fox News talked about this race. They showed 1% of the vote in, and Bernie Moreno had a slight lead. This place erupted into applause. I don't know, Ray, if we can see over here, this person has the sanitation vest that President Trump wore when he was trying to capitalize on some comments that the current president, Joe Biden, made about his supporters, and then he got into a garbage truck the next couple of days. Back out here, this is where the bar is, the food, you can see this is really filling up. People are trying to basically have a good night, waiting for those results. The shrimp tower, we talked about it at 6 o'clock. I can report, Brett, some of it is starting to come down, but still a lot of shrimp left.
Andrew Rowan, live outside of Cleveland right now. All right, we were talking about Senator Sherrod Brown. Let's go out to WCPO 9 News reporter Sean Delancey, who is with Senator Brown's team in Columbus. All right, Sean, we finally see you inside. We hear the music going on. What's the feeling like in Columbus?
Yeah, Brett, finally got through all the security sweeps and got inside the building instead of being out in the hotel all day. But I'll tell you, the vibe in here is pretty good. The music is pumping. There's probably a couple hundred people in here right now, and you can see people are having a good time. Moreno is behind right now, according to the latest polls from Decision Desk HQ. Currently coming down at about 56% for Sherrod Brown, 42% for Bernie Moreno. And I'll get to some of those numbers here in a second, but I tell you, Andrew just showed you the shrimp tower. Bernie is probably already won the food battle. When we're talking about these parties, we got a pizza buffet in the far corner here, so I think the shrimp tower obviously beats that. But going back to those poll numbers, the returns that are coming in right now, this is a pretty good start for Sherrod Brown at this point, coming in with about a 14-point lead as we begin to count these votes. But you got to think to yourself, these are the population centers in the areas like Cleveland, Akron, Dayton, Columbus, Cincinnati. That's where a lot of these results are coming from right now, and those are largely either purple or Democratic strongholds. Those numbers are going to come in D-heavy to begin with, and then as we begin to get those results from rural counties, Republicans are going to have a significant advantage in those areas. But I'll tell you what, how people are feeling here tonight is all going to come down to the results as they continue to filter in through the rest of the evening. And that's all going to come down to how we go to the middle ground voters. Now, Brown has been putting himself out there as that centrist candidate besides the D next to his name. People are cheering around here. I don't see exactly what they're cheering for. It may be the results from North Carolina. Looks like Josh Stein just got projected as the winner over Mark Robinson, but Brown has very much been presenting himself as the centrist candidate, the guy who's there for the workers, for the union people, trying to raise wages, things along those lines, and he's been trying to paint Bernie Moreno as a radical on issues like abortion, women's reproductive rights. This has been a campaign of trying to get people in the center to cross the aisle, or on the R side to cross the aisle and support Sherrod Brown. This morning, we caught up with him, one of our crews, and he talked about how he was happy just to participate in the democratic process and how he feels after casting his ballot this morning.
You feel good just getting the ability to walk from your home and go vote in the morning or whenever. People should go to iwillvote.com if they haven't yet voted to find out their polling place. Terrific honor to be able to vote, and I feel good about this election. Elections are about whose side are you on, and politics is about whose side are you on. And my whole career, I fought for the dignity of work, and I think that's why so many people in my neighborhood. I've never seen this. I've never had this happen, and we had no idea.
Yeah, they were definitely having fun this morning, but I tell you one thing that is going to be key for Brown in a moment like this. We've been talking about it all evening, all afternoon, or what are called split ticket voters. Those are essentially the ones who walked into the ballot booth thinking, I'm definitely going to vote for Donald Trump, but I can cross across the aisle there to vote for a Democrat for Senate. Not clear whether he picked up enough of those split ticket voters. They, again, have been trying to paint Moreno as that kind of radical on issues like abortion to pick those people up. It's going to be a long night. As you can see, energy's high for the moment. Brown currently has a lead, but the voters are going to decide whether that energy stays high through the rest of the night. In Columbus, I'm Sean Delancey, WCPO 9 News.
All right, Sean, thank you for that. And the Decision Desk has called 2 of Ohio's House races at this hour. In Ohio's 2nd District, Republican David Taylor is projected to win over Democrat Samantha Meadows. So this is for the seat currently held by Republican Congressman Brad Wenstrup. And in Ohio's 8th District, Republican incumbent Warren Davidson is the projected winner, fending off a challenger from Democrat Vanessa Enoch. So another big race we're watching is Democratic Congressman Greg Landsman, who is defending his seat in the House against his Republican challenger, Orlando Sanza. So Landsman flipped the seat for Democrats 2 years ago when he defeated Republican Congressman Steve Chabot. Sanza is a former assistant prosecutor who is now heading the Hamilton County Veterans Service Commission. And Sanza's team and his supporters are gathering tonight at Manor House in Mason. Landsman's team will watch the results come in from Queen City Exchange in downtown Cincinnati. So Ohio's first congressional district seat is up for grabs tonight. The district includes the city of Cincinnati and all of Warren County. So the race is between Democratic incumbent Greg Landsman, his Republican challenger Orlando Sanza, and WCPO 9 News reporter Sam Harris-Simwitz is live in Over the Rhine, where Congressman Landsman is going to be watching the results. All right, Sam, how's it feeling out there?
The crowd is starting to pick up here, Brett, but actually everyone here is waiting for the congressman himself, who has yet to arrive here. We can show you as the Queen City Exchange is starting to pack up here of supporters, a lot of them decked out in Congressman Landsman apparel. Now, we do have numbers that we can show you from our partners at Decision Desk HQ. Right now, they're reporting 46% of the votes in with incumbent Congressman Greg Landsman with 104,000 votes. They have that at 57.3%. His Republican opponent, Orlando Sanza, they have with about 77,000 votes. That's at 42.7%. Now, throughout his campaign, incumbent Congressman Greg Landsman has put a big part of his focus on supporting families, supporting the middle class, and supporting local jobs, also with focus on reproductive rights and voting rights. But he has cited a lot of bipartisan work throughout his campaign over his last 2 years in Congress when he was able to flip that seat from Republican to Democrat back in 2022, especially his work with the bipartisan border bill. That was something he reiterated to us a lot during his campaign. But he did talk about the importance of tonight's election from the top of the ticket on down.
And this is a huge moment in terms of freedom, particularly reproductive freedom. And so, I think this is an election or a time when leadership matters. I believe in it and believe in this district and, hope that people will send me back.
Again, our partners at Decision Desk HQ have Congressman Landsman in the lead right now. He is expected to be speaking whenever that race is called, and we'll, of course, be bringing you live updates as the night goes on. Live here in OTR, Sam Harris-Simwitz, WCPO 9 News.
All right, Sam Harris-Simwitz there. All right, we're going to take a quick break right now to cut into ABC programming. Or actually, no, we'll stand corrected right there. So, all right, let's, Richard, we were talking about some of the splits right there. You were talking about how Senator Brown is really outperforming here. We only got a little bit of time, so kind of give us your analysis.
Just real quick. I mean, bottom line is he needs people to go into the ballot box, pull a lever for Trump, because that's the majority of people in Ohio are going to do, and then go down a little bit further and connect with him, right? And what we're seeing right now is, like, say, for example, in Medina, Trump's winning that county by 56. Brown has got it 52.
All right, we're going to go back to ABC programming. We'll be back.
Continuing right now with our America Votes coverage for you on WCPO 9 News, I'm Craig McKee.
I'm Tanya O'Rourke. Results are coming in, including for the presidential race. The state of Kentucky has been called for former President Donald Trump. This is not a surprise. That puts 8 electoral votes in the former president's coffer. In fact, if we look at last time in 2020, he won 62-36 and projected right now at 65-33 in Kentucky.
The same goes for the GOP nominee in Indiana. Our Decision Desk HQ showing the Hoosier state is declaring former President Trump the winner there as well.
Now, Ohio has not yet been called. Here is a current look at the presidential race as it stands at this moment in Ohio. 31% of the vote in right now. Kamala Harris has 53% of the vote. Donald Trump, 46%.
Let's take a current look at the Electoral College map here. Former President Trump is out in the early lead here as these numbers continue to be projected across the country. You see 105 right now in the Trump column, Harris column sitting at 31.
Another call. According to our Decision Desk, Senator Mike Braun will be the next governor of Indiana. The Republican senator was facing Democrat Jennifer McCormick and Libertarian Donald Rainwater. Republican Governor Eric Holcomb is term limited. He cannot run for a third term.
Let's take a look here. Braun's seat actually in the Senate will be Republican Jim Banks. That's the call from our Decision Desk as well here. Banks is projected to defeat Democrat Valerie McRae in this race and Libertarian Andy Horning as well. Now, the race for U.S. Senate in Ohio is still to be decided, but it's received a lot of attention.
And we have WCPO 9 News reporter Andrew Rowan in Cleveland, where Republican candidate Bernie Moreno is stationed. Andrew, how's it feeling there?
This crowd is now here and they are fired up. Walk with me here as we sort of show you how this is set up. You've got all of these supporters essentially watching another network. They're trying to figure out the results. The most high energy moment was when they talked about this rate. 1% of the vote was in, and this place erupted because it showed Bernie Moreno had a slight lead. The question, though, a lot of people here are wondering is really how long of a night is this going to be? I was just talking to a supporter out here where they've got all the food and the beverages. They've got coffee here, and he looked at me. I was walking around. He goes, is it the kind of night where I want a caffeinated cup of coffee at 8 p.m.? That is sort of the vibe we're getting here. Are we in for a short night or a long night? We know Bernie Moreno himself is watching results with his family. He'll then be here later tonight to address supporters. Live in Cleveland, Andrew Rowan, WCPO 9 News.
All right, Andrew, thanks so much. Meanwhile, WCPO reporter Sean Delancey is in Columbus with incumbent Sherrod Brown's camp.
Sean, what have you seen up there so far?
Yeah, well, Tanya and Craig, you can definitely hear it right now. Congresswoman Joyce Beatty's taking the stage, and the energy in here is high as Senator Sherrod Brown jumps out to an early lead, as according to some of the early returns, according to Decision Desk HQ. We're looking at about 54 to 43% between Sherrod Brown and Bernie Moreno. Sherrod Brown has already crossed the million vote mark that has been counted right now, with about 32% responding here. So energy is high, but you got to remember that these early returns are largely from population centers that favor the Democrats. We're talking about Cleveland, Akron, Columbus, Dayton, Cincinnati, areas like that. And as the night goes on, that's when a lot of those rural counties will begin to see their returns, and those are going to be heavily Republican, which could help Bernie Moreno. The energy here is all going to depend on whether Sherrod Brown can maintain that lead, guys.
All right, Sean Delancey reporting live out there again. We have crews stationed all over the tri-state covering every aspect of all of this. We're going to have continuing coverage on both the state, local races, national races on WCPO 9 streaming channel as well. It's free to watch wherever you stream.
That's right. Our Brett Bugansky's holding down the desk there. We hope you'll join us there, and we'll see you right back here on ABC for another update in just about 30 minutes, and of course, tonight at 11.
Welcome back to WCPO 9 News coverage of the 2024 election. I'm Brett Pagansky. All right, the polls have been closed now for about an hour in Ohio. And of course, I'm here with our friend Richard Harknett, the head of UC's political science department. So we have more results for you tonight. But first, we want to pick it up in Mason. That's where we find WCPO 9 News reporter Jay Shakur, who was with Orlando Sansa's team watching the results come in. All right, Jay, it looks like a little bit of activities picked up from where you are at Orlando Sansa's watch party.
Brett, Orlando Sansa supporters are excited. I'll move out of the way so you can see the crowd. If you were watching with us earlier, it was a bit empty here, but now they have poured into this room, filled this room, really confident they can take back this seat for Republicans. This race is really going to come down to turnout. Will enough Democrats come out in Cincinnati compared to Republican strongholds like Warren County? Ohio's first congressional district covers all of Cincinnati and the East Hamilton County suburbs of Anderson Township, Indian Hill, and Montgomery. It also includes all of Warren County. Sansa, a former Hamilton County assistant prosecutor and now the executive director of the Hamilton County Veterans Service Commission, focused on crime, immigration, and the economy during this race, supporting former President Trump's tax cut proposals. Sansa also promises to increase funding for community policing and mental health resources. Sansa's organizers and supporters telling me tonight it's about turnout in Warren County. They say the last election, when the longtime incumbent Republican lost this seat to Congressman Landsman 2 years ago, only 51% of Republican voters showed up. Best case scenario for them tonight, Hamilton County turnout remains the same as the last election, and Warren County turnout exceeds that 51%.
Tonight, looking at the data and the voters in Warren County where I live, if we have the voter turnout that is projected, this is a very winnable race. Chabot only lost by, I think, 14,000 votes.
Now the supporters are here, and I said they are very confident that they could win this race with turnout from Warren County. Results are still coming in. We'll keep you updated on air and online. In Mason, Jay Shakur, WCPO 9 News.
All right, Jay, thank you for that. All right, and this is one of the biggest races that we are watching tonight. The entire country is watching tonight. Three-term Democratic Senator Sherrod Brown is facing a Republican challenger, Bernie Moreno. So Brown is one of the state's longest-serving politicians. You know, of course, Bernie Moreno is a Colombian-born Cleveland businessman, and former President Donald Trump endorsed him. And one of the really interesting things about this is this contest is officially hit $500 million, making it the most expensive Senate race in history. And this is something that we've covered here at WCPO 9 News. The fact that you have not only both campaigns spending tens of millions of dollars, but you've got a lot of outside money coming in this race. And Richard, wanted to get your take just about the fact that this has become such an important Senate race when it comes to the balance of power, the amount of money that's going in, but also what you're seeing with some of those early returns coming in, who is kind of outpacing whom at this point.
Yeah, I mean, some of your viewers go, $500 million for one race. Like, why is they paying that much? It's because if you hold the Senate by just one vote, right, you set the committees, you set the agenda, you control the floor, right? And so Brown was identified by the Republicans early on as a Senate seat that they could flip. Why? Because President Trump is so popular. But looking at, I've gone through about 10 counties right now. Moreno is underperforming Trump in those counties by 3 to 4%. So what that means is about 3 to 4% of the folks that are going in there are voting for Trump, and then they're turning around and voting for Brown.
And that is exactly what Senator Brown's people wanted. They were depending on a lot of those people who were going to be voting for President Donald Trump and going for Sherrod Brown, splitting their ticket.
Yeah, so there is absolutely tickets being split at this point. The question is it enough, right? The early polls in Ohio were that Trump could possibly win the state by about 6, which means that Brown's got to make this up by 6. Right now, these early numbers, he's at about 3 to 4%. So while he's getting splitters, he's not getting potentially enough to win the race. So, but he's got the trend where he wants it. He just needs it to be a little bit bigger.
You know, and kind of looking historically here, when you're looking at the 2022 Senate race between Senator J.D. Vance and Tim Ryan, you know, Ryan only carried 8 counties. But then looking at the 2018 race, it was Sherrod Brown who carried 16 counties right there. The big difference there was the northeastern counties in Ohio, but also around the Akron area, around Toledo. Those were big deciding factors there. And you have to wonder if those same counties, which typically would go for President Donald Trump, if they're going to go to Sherrod Brown tonight.
Yeah. And again, he's not going to win those counties, right? He just needs to make sure that he doesn't lose those counties by the same that Harris is losing those counties. And so far, that's what he's doing. The question is, it's just going to come down to raw numbers. And as you said, it's turnout, right? Because we're only projecting how many people are actually going to show up. So the percentages are not as important as the actual raw numbers.
And then the emotions are going to be brought out with a lot of people on the turnout. If they're somewhat content or if they're just kind of disinterested, it could affect the outcome in the race right there. But you've got a lot of issues. You've got the economy on people's mind. You've also got reproductive rights, but you also have immigration. But you look at some of the top issues in some of those exit polls, you have to wonder what's going to get people to come out and vote for this person or the next person.
Yeah, and that's what has been fascinating about this race in Ohio. If you looked at most of the advertising, it was really more on social cultural issues that they were trying to hit Brown on, right? He's just too liberal, right? It didn't really make this about an economic, most of that advertising, most of that $500 million, right? And Brown was coming back and saying, hey, I'll do what's good for Ohio, right? And so he was trying to play effectively a centrist, turning himself into a centrist Democrat. By most standards, he was more on the liberal to centrist route, but everything has been realigned, right, since President Trump entered politics back in 2016.
Yeah, and he has a chance to make history only Grover Cleveland had done, where he had been voted out of office and then potentially could go back in, but still very early. It could be days before we find out there. And going back to Senator Sherrod Brown's message there, in a lot of the messaging, he did like to kind of put himself as a centrist, saying, well, I worked with President Trump on this, we've worked on this, more of Ohio, where you've got his challenger, Bernie Moreno. It's pretty much all been a national implication there. So you have to wonder, was Sherrod using that sort of strategy by saying, yeah, I have worked with President Trump? You have to wonder how big that's going to be for getting people to split their ticket.
Yeah, I mean, that was the only strategy. If you look, Vice President Harris didn't spend a lot of time in Ohio.
Not at all.
And that was a decision not about the presidential election. It was about the Senate race, right? There was a recognition that they weren't going to necessarily be the engine for turnout, for him, that he had to go and he had to be his own candidate. Again, he's getting people to split. So it's going to be interesting as the night goes on about whether those numbers actually tally up enough to make up the difference.
And of course, they're tallying up right now. We've got our reporters at different watch parties right here. We're going to try to go to WCPO 9 News reporter Andrew Rowan, who is at Bernie Moreno's camp near the Cleveland area. All right, Andrew, you were saying that they had a different station on as they're coming. The results are coming in right there. What's the feeling like as the minutes have gone by?
People are intently watching this, Brett. You can see everybody sort of gathered. They've got a bite to eat. They're all looking. But to go back to something that you both were just talking about in the last few minutes, reproductive rights. I think no matter how this race goes over the next couple of hours, tomorrow we're going to be talking the role of abortion in this race. Of course, Bernie Moreno was caught on camera in Warren County a couple of weeks ago making those comments about suburban women over 50, saying that he was not a little sure why they were one-issue voters, or telling him that they were one-issue voters, and he said, quote, that's a little crazy. Bernie Moreno's Sherrod Brown's campaign turned that into an advertisement and ran it over and over and over again, using his own words against him. When he was in Batavia over the weekend, we specifically asked him, do you regret making those comments? Take a listen to what he had to say when we asked him that on Saturday.
Do you regret those?
Look, at the end of the day, Sherrod Brown's an extremist on abortion. The reality is he knows better than anybody else there's no votes either way on this issue nationally. It's enshrined in our Constitution.
So you can hear there, he sort of deflected the question a little bit, talked about the referendum that Ohio had on the ballot last year, trying to move the conversation forward a little bit. But that is one of the things I think we'll be talking about tomorrow. What was the demographic breakdown in this race, and how many people came out to the polls saying abortion was their top issue? Brett?
All right, Andrew, you know, the former president and Bernie Moreno are aligned. They make it very clear in a lot of the political ads, but there is one area that they're not aligned. What say you?
Yeah, Bernie Moreno mentioned this morning. We asked him, will you accept the results of the election? And all along throughout this campaign, he has been a fierceful yes. He has been supporting the Ohio Secretary of State, saying we run elections well in this campaign in the state. Take a listen to what he had to say.
We should be very proud of the elections we run here in Ohio. And I think regardless of what the outcome is, whether it's Sherrod Brown that wins or me that wins, both of us will respect the outcome and know that it was a true reflection of the voters' will.
Shades of blue, that means the margin.
I will say, Brett, though, there is a lot of Trump memorabilia, apparel here. If we take a little bit of a walk, you've got, do you mind, sir, do you mind if we show your shirt? It says, I'm voting for the convicted felon. Looks good on you, sir. I like your hat as well. So you can see there's a lot of different Trump branded apparel. That is really the message here, because Bernie Moreno and President Trump, former President Trump, have really been aligned, running that message deep into suburban and rural counties. Brett?
Andrew Rowan live outside of Cleveland for us. All right, let's go to WCPO 9 News reporter Sean Delansky, who's live with Senator Sherrod Brown's team in Columbus. And Sean, I know they're watching the returns right now. They're looking pretty confident and sounding confident here.
Yeah, Brett, I tell you what, I've covered a lot of these elections, and while everyone out here, there's a few hundred people out here having a really good time. The wine is flowing, the people are dancing, the music is loud. You can see they're having a pretty good time. I guarantee that Sherrod Brown's actual team, actual campaign is sitting in a back room somewhere sweating bullets. Right now, the early returns have it coming in as 52.5% for Sherrod Brown, 45.2% for Bernie Moreno, about 35% reporting according to Decision Desk here. Now, again, a lot of those are coming in from your rural, your population centers. Those are largely Democrat regions, you know, your Cleveland, Columbus, Cincinnati, somewhat Dayton, purple or Democrat areas. It's going to take a little bit longer for those rural counties to actually report. And just about every one of those votes, probably 4 and 5, is going to be for Bernie Moreno. There may be less people, but there's definitely a lot more support for Bernie Moreno in those areas. So as the night goes on, it's going to be really interesting to see how this levels out. The polls coming into tonight had it basically a dead heat. So seeing an 8% lead at this point just isn't sensible. It's not going to remain that way through the rest of the evening. Now, the one thing that probably is going to help Brown, if he does end up taking this, is that he did pitch himself as the centrist, the man for the working class, the man who was there for the workers, the manufacturers of Ohio, especially over the last 4 years when the economy was the biggest, pressing point for Republicans. With inflation, no matter what it might be, the economy itself was doing pretty good, but man, prices were high. And that was something that Republicans have hammered on candidates all around the country, including Senator Sherrod Brown. And now, as you just heard Andrew talking about there, it wasn't the main point that Bernie Moreno was bringing out about his campaign, because Sherrod Brown is pretty popular when it comes to those workers' rights, those union issues that people care about when they go to the ballot box. But it's definitely going to impact him. Whether he can get enough of those split ticket ballots is going to be interesting. Also, another thing, there have been a couple of speakers who've come out here. There's a defiant tone here tonight. Whether Sherrod Brown wins or not, whether the Democrats keep the Senate or not, they've talked about continuing the fight, continuing to make sure that they do what they do no matter what happens, and that also does include in the presidential election. This is a Democrat hub, so there's going to be a lot of candidates that come here tonight to either give an acceptance speech or, hopefully not for the people here, Brown coming out and giving a potential concession speech as we continue to count these votes. But we're going to continue keeping an eye on it. We're going to continue gauging the room. It's always fun. Again, I've covered a lot of these. When you get into that 9:30, 10 o'clock, and it becomes obvious whether people start losing their minds or they just slowly trickle out. We'll keep an eye on it, Brett.
All right, Sean Delancey at Senator Brown's campaign here, and talking about people who are on pins and needles right here. We're just getting this reporting from, we got Sean, I'll ask you a question here. One of the things that Sherrod Brown's campaign had really pushed the idea of him becoming a centrist, having a localized message for Ohio, and as someone who worked with the former president in the past, are you getting a sense that that strategy is working tonight?
That's, really going to be hard to tell. It's going to be obvious at the end of the night whether it did in fact work. But I think you can see in some of these early returns where, Brown may be outperforming Kamala Harris in the state of Ohio, for example, that's obviously a message that resonated with some folks here in the state. I just think that, and this is a personal opinion, that it is a lot harder to deliver that centrist message in today's America, where people are just more divided in general. You can look at, say, for example, a good example of this is just across, the state line in West Virginia, where probably the most independent senator of our generation, Joe Manchin, is not going to be in the Senate anymore. A Republican is going to be replacing him because West Virginia went so hard right. Now, Ohio's a little bit more purple, but definitely been shifting red. So I think it's been more and more difficult over the years for a candidate like Sherrod Brown, somebody who pitches themselves as a center, moderate, but still left candidate to actually make it to the end in today's day and age.
All right, Sean, we'll check in with you later tonight here. Well, the other thing we were talking about the waiting game here, because this is one of those evenings where it's going to get nerve-wracking no matter who you are aligned with or what issue you align with. We're getting this reporting from our own Valerie Lyons right now that this is regarding election officials in Hamilton County right now. Trucks are arriving late with ballots. They have no day of ballots in yet. And everything currently posted is only absentee ballots. So the trucks are expected to arrive starting at 9 o'clock, so that's in about 13 minutes from now. And the results should come in, get this, 11 p.m. through midnight. So it could be a very long night. It could be, 1 a.m. right there. So this is one of those things where we decide, all right, we would probably know who's going to be our next congressperson or next U.S. Senate. It could be the next day or a couple of days before that ends up happening.
One of the things about that is the system, though, that we have in Ohio is actually one of the most secure in the country. And so it was good to hear, candidate Moreno saying, hey, if this doesn't go my way, I'm going to accept this vote. So we've got what they call a dual key situation in Ohio. So there's a Democrat and Republican. You have to actually key together to get into the room to where these ballots are and get them going in terms of getting counted. So a very, very secure system. And look, we're going to take our time and get it right versus rushing. So they may be a little behind schedule, but it's actually not an issue about security. In fact, it's a very secure system.
All right. If you're just joining us, Richard Hartnett from the University of Cincinnati Political Science Department giving us up-to-date analysis on one of the most important nights when it comes to deciding who will be going to the White House, going for the U.S. Senate, and joining the House of Representatives. All right. Another local race that we're watching here is the race for Hamilton County Prosecutor. Incumbent Republican Melissa Powers is facing Democrat challenger Connie Pillage. So looking at some of those returns right now, it is Connie Pillage who is ahead almost 58%, 59% to Melissa Powers, nearly 42%. So looking at a difference of 25,205. Still a lot to come in because, once again, this is only the early votes coming in. So we may not know who is going to be going to these offices until later in the night right here. So make sure you watch WCPO and look at our streaming channel, WCPO.com. So regardless of who wins here, so they're going to be making history as the first woman elected to prosecutor in Hamilton County. And Melissa Powers has held this position since 2023, appointed by Hamilton County Republican Party when former prosecutor Joe Dieters was appointed to the Ohio Supreme Court there. And, Melissa Powers has described herself as like the hometown girl right here. And we've seen some of those ads going against Connie Pillage saying that, hey, she's never tried a case right here. But she also hasn't, Melissa Powers, that is, really, when she was appointed, this will be the first time to get a sense of how voters in Hamilton County view her, because this is her first time up for election.
Yeah, I mean, incumbency always is a bit of an advantage, right? And so this one's going to be an interesting one, again, in terms of turnout. And what we're looking right now, I mean, just looking at first district numbers that have come in, it does look like it's going to be a higher turnout, at least down here in Southwest Ohio. And so that's going to be an interesting factor in terms of how we play this thing out.
And especially because that office has been a Republican stronghold for such a long time. But looking at Cincinnati City Council, and then you look at the current sheriff, Charmaine McGuffey, it has been leading Democratic this whole time. So that office is going to be a very important one when it comes to how Hamilton County is going to fare over the next few years.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, another big race in Hamilton County pits the current sheriff against the former sheriff. It is a rematch between Sheriff Charmaine McGuffey and former Sheriff Jim Neal. McGuffey beat Neal in the Democratic primary in 2020, but this time Neal is running as a Republican. Both grew up on the west side of the city. They went to Western Hills High School. They both earned criminal justice degrees from the University of Cincinnati. So as far as their career with the Hamilton County Sheriff's Office, Neal joined the office in 1981, and then McGuffey joined 2 years later in 1983. So another one that we're following here is the race for Indiana governor tonight. So we are following the race for Indiana governor, and this has been called with Republican Governor Eric Holcomb, who is term limited. He can't run for a third term, so voters ended up deciding, and it looks like Senator Mike Braun has got that office right there. So it's interesting how some of the early returns are coming in right there. Looking at Indiana has been decided in some of the races. Same thing with Kentucky right now. But I think all eyes right now are on the state of Ohio, knowing Hamilton County is got that delay right now with some of those votes coming in the day of votes there.
Yeah, and I was just checking up Cuyahoga. Cuyahoga's only got about 35% showing up right now as well. So, if you look at the statewide numbers, Trump is winning by about 3%. Brown is winning by 2%. That's a 5% flip, right? So that's something that can he sustain that? So in these numbers that are sitting on same day vote, this is what we were talking about earlier about the pandemic, right? 2020, we had all these early votes. We've kind of gone back to a norm. Like, people are showing up on election day, and that's when they're casting their votes. So while we have a lot of early votes to count, there's still a lot of folks that are voting today, and it appears like we're going to be waiting a little longer than normal with regard to the Hamilton count.
Yeah, so if you guys are just joining us right now, we got some reporting from our very own Valerie Lyons saying that the trucks arriving late with the ballots. This is for Hamilton County Board of Elections. So everything currently posted on the website is absentee. Those trucks are expected to arrive right around 9 o'clock. So about 7 minutes from now, those results coming in between 11 p.m. and midnight. So if you're looking to find out a little bit of clarity about some of these races and before going to bed, I'm sorry, it could be a long ride for you right here.
So get your pajamas on.
Get your yeah, go. There are a lot of rest, but you can keep it at WCPO right there. So, all right. So we're going to go to the Ohio Supreme Court races. Another important one coming in. You got 6 candidates running for 3 open seats. Republicans have held that majority on the court for decades, and the GOP wants to expand that majority. So Democrats are trying to hold onto 2 seats and win an open seat. So how important are these races? Well, we got Cleveland Democrat versus Cincinnati Republican Joe Deters. So both incumbent justices here. Governor Mike DeWine appointed Deters to that unexpired term, but Joe Deters is challenging Stewart a full term right there. So Cleveland Democrat Michael Donnelly is being challenged by Cincinnati Republican Megan Shanahan, a Hamilton County common plea court judge. We got Cleveland Democrat Lisa Forbes and Columbus Republican Dan Hawkins running for the seat that will be left open by Joe Deters. So Forbes is an 8th District appellate court judge. Hawkins is a Franklin County common plea court judge. So a lot of stuff right there, a lot of races to get to right there. But let's go back to the race for U.S. Senate in Ohio right there. Still very close to call. But it looked like, as you were talking about earlier, that Sherrod Brown in some of these counties where former President Donald Trump had been very, very good, he's actually overperforming in some areas. It's a question of, is it going to be enough?
That's right. Yeah. I mean, the polling before the election had Trump potentially winning Ohio by 6%, right? Right now, he's only beating Harris by about 3%. If those numbers held, then this could be a good night for Brown, right? But if Trump gets up into that 6% range, right now the split is about 5%. So it's really, really going to be a lot tighter than probably Bernie Moreno would like it to be. And at least the Brown supporters have some hope right now early on in the evening.
And I hope if we can go back to that full screen again, I think this is the one that's on WCPO.com right now. We got Sherrod Brown with 1.3 million votes, Bernie Moreno coming in at 1.2, 44% coming in right now. It could be a late night, so there's still a lot that could happen. Keep it right here, WCPO. We'll see you in a bit. I think we're
Continuing now with our America Votes coverage for you on WCPO 9 News, I'm Tanya O'Rourke.
And I'm Craig McKee. Results are continuing to come in at this hour.
The decision desk has called 2 of Ohio's House races. In Ohio's 2nd District, Republican David Taylor is projected to win over Democrat Samantha Meadows. Now, this is for the seat that is currently held by Republican Brad Wenstrup, who announced about a year ago that he was not going to seek re-election.
That's right. In Ohio's 8th District, Republican incumbent Warren Davidson is the projected winner there, fending off a challenge from Democrat Vanessa Enoch.
Another big race that we are watching. Democratic Congressman Greg Landsman is defending his seat in the House against Republican Orlando Sonza.
Landsman, you may recall, flipped the seat for Democrats 2 years ago when he defeated Republican Steve Shabbat at the time. Sonza, former assistant prosecutor, now heads up the Hamilton County Veterans Service Commission.
Here is a current look at the Electoral College map. Former President Trump, let's take a look at that if we can, out to an early lead, and you can see that there with most of the southeast or, from Indiana, Kentucky, and parts down, mostly going for the former president at this time. That's the very latest from the Tri-State. We have continuing live coverage of our state and local races on WCPO.com.
And we have obviously everything you can access, all the latest updates on everything on WCPO.com. You can look at the national track of where the votes are coming in, the number of precincts coming in as we still look at the electoral map there, which is being updated constantly. And we're seeing some record numbers of turnouts, especially in Georgia tonight, reporting a record number of people heading to the polls in that state. I think we're going to see that in many other states throughout the night.
I think it's going to be a very long night. We'll see you later.